So good evening and welcome all to Jungle Chimes. It's an initiative by Team Exploring Nature. Exploring Nature is a wildlife consulting initiative, and we have different things in our kitty. So we have nature trails and photo work. We propose nature and wildlife photography workshops. Then we are planning for nature and wildlife photography camps. And we are also planning for nature and wildlife photography expedition in collaboration with travel companies and locals. So in fact, there are some events in pipeline. Till December, we are planning one event in Sultanpur and another one in Mangalajori, Odisha. So there are several events which are lined up, and I request all to join our Facebook group, Exploring the Nature, and also to look at our website, exploringnature.net. So this is our initiative, which is a knowledge sharing platform, Jungle Chimes, where we invite the experts from different fields of photography, and they share their experiences. They share, and we, the audience, we have the learnings from them. So today we have with us Mr. Santanu Majumder. He is a retired Indian Air Force officer, and for the last 17 years, he is in this photography field, and he has been into different genre. He has started with macro, then he moved into bird photography, and then over the last several years, he has developed a special interest in landscape and wide field astrophotography. So astrophotography is a pretty, for me at least, it's a pretty new thing, and I believe that many of our audience will also be very curious to know about what it is and how sir is moving along with this astrophotography. So, sir, uh, he has written a
Yes, please.
couple of books also, e-books on shooting star trails and the Milky Way. And his images have been published in magazines like Asian Photography, Smart Photography, etc. And he has received several awards in national and international exhibitions and photo salons. So I will stop here and over to you, sir. I shall stop sharing. So we are eagerly waiting for your presentation, sir. Welcome again. Thank you.
Okay, I hope you can see the presentation, right?
Yes, sir. Perfectly all right. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, hi. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I know South Africa and India are locking their horns in Australia, but let's get on with our presentation today. Firstly, thanks to Mukul and the entire Exploring Nature team to give me an opportunity to speak or present what I have learned over the past few years. I don't claim to be an expert. I mean, I have a slight reservation about the word expert because I think it is a vast field, and I am constantly learning new things. Every day and every trip that I make, I learn new things. So, given that particular thing, I would rather be a student than an expert. But then, whatever I have learned over the last few years during my journey as an astrophotographer and a landscape photographer, I'll try and share a few insights today through this presentation. So. One sec. I think these are a lot of. So let me start off with this small poem from Gerard Manley Hopkins, which says, "Look at the stars. Look up at the skies. Oh, look at all the firefolk sitting in the air, the bright burrows, the circle citadels there. Down in the dim woods, the diamond delves, the elf's eyes. Now, why I chose this particular poem is to, emphasize the fact that while I, having been born in the 70s, 60s in Dhanbad, can still understand how stars could have looked like diamonds or the eyes of elves, it's very difficult to explain to my own daughter today that stars could look like those, because in Hyderabad, where I'll share a clipping subsequently during the presentation. I can count the number of stars that I can see on an absolutely clear night on my fingertips. So it's very difficult to explain the concept of starry nights to children. Now the stars are more on the ground than on the in the sky. But having said that, uh, that doesn't prevent me from, because once in a while I travel to areas or locations where it is so wonderful to spend time under the stars. And the advantage with this genre of photography is that there are very few people around when I am shooting the stars. So I have my own, one-on-one session with the stars, and that's absolutely magical. So, given that background, and I think already Ishani has said a few things about me. So these are all said and done. Uh, some of my photographs during the my journey as a photographer, I'm sharing. So, like, these are some of the macro photographs that I had taken. Subsequently, I have traveled quite a bit actually, for bird photography as well, to various parts of the country actually. And so these are some of my bird photographs. I have clicked, a few wildlife also, in terms of snow leopard and red foxes and a few other things. Having traveled, I also have dabbled in travel photography, but subsequently, I think what I realized is that my affinity lies for landscape, with maybe a special, attraction for long exposure photography. And this long exposure, of course, even the astrophotography is long exposure photography. So my present affinity is towards long exposure, be it daytime or nighttime. And so these are like a compilation of few of the star trail photographs that I have all over the country. And these are, of course, some of the photographs of Milky Ways, again, clicked at various parts of the country. Let me tell you, I will show subsequently where all I have shot. So I have shot in almost uh, all the extremities of the country, especially places which offer you that opportunity of shooting decent nightscapes. So how I choose these, of course, I'll be sharing. So having said that, let me start off with the concept of astrophotography. But before I do that, there is a caveat. Let me clarify one particular aspect. I am a photographer, not an astronomer. So my interest in astrophotography is from the viewpoint or the perspective of a photographer, not an astronomer. So that's just to explain that how or what attracts me to this particular field or this genre of photography. Okay, now coming to astrophotography. Astrophotography, the way we know or commonly we execute, can be broadly categorized into three separate subgenres. One is, of course, deep sky astrophotography. One is solar system astrophotography, and the third genre is the wide field astrophotography, which will be today's topic basically. So, what is deep space astrophotography? It's primarily refers to images that are taken with the use of telescope or even super telezooms of objects beyond our solar system, like the one you see on the screen right now. This is a photograph of the Orion Nebula. Okay, I do not do deep sky astrophotography, so I have borrowed this particular thing from the sourced it from the internet. This is a image of the Orion Nebula by a gentleman called Richardson. So this is perhaps one of the most challenging genres of astrophotography because it is uh, gear intensive. You need a lot of specialized equipment to carry out this particular genre, type of photography, and it also requires enormous amount of post processing. Uh, so this is something which, if somebody wants, do excuse me, please. Yeah, sorry, my dog did not like the presentation that much, so he left the room. So, you know, as I said, this is perhaps the most uh, difficult genre, and only those people who have a special fascination for deep sky objects perhaps go into this particular genre. Uh, Next, of course, is the solar system astrophotography, whereby we primarily, shoot images of planets, moons, that is, the sun, and basically, these photographs pertain to various celestial bodies in our solar system. This is also, shot with either telescopes or super telezooms on a DSLR. And okay, these are some photographs that I have clicked. These are all Hyderabad. In fact, the last one is the latest solar eclipse, that partial solar eclipse that we had a couple of, or in fact, a week back. And this was shot right from my balcony in Hyderabad. And the third genre, which we are actually going to discuss in detail today, in some detail rather, is the wide field astrophotography. Now, this is something that we practice with a DSLR camera and a lens with a wide field of view, or more simply, a wide angle lens. These are images that you see which include the starry skies or the Milky Way or the star trails, along with a man-made or a natural feature. This is perhaps the easiest genre for beginners, because to begin with, you can execute this with a tripod camera and maybe a remote shutter release. Even that may not be required sometimes. So this is something which most astrophotographers begin with, and subsequently, depending on interest, one progresses maybe towards the deep sky astrophotography. However, today we will be restricting our presentation to only the wide field astrophotography aspect, and while it may not be possible to cover exactly in fine details as to how to capture star trails or Milky Ways, but I will definitely share some inputs or insights that I have gained over the last few years in order to give an idea as to how to capture better images in this particular genre. So, having said that, so what do we need, basically to shoot wide field astrophotographs? I would say we need a DSLR camera. This is again what I would recommend: a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, which can handle high ISO settings, maybe up to 8,000. A wide angle lens, which would be 24 or wider, with a minimum aperture of 2.8. An external intervalometer or a remote shutter release. Uh, this is despite the many of the modern cameras coming with built-in intervalometer, it is preferable to have an external intervalometer or a remote shutter release, primarily to avoid touching the camera when the shooting is on. A sturdy tripod with a good ball head. We often scrounge on this ball head part of it, but let me tell you, the ball head that I use is actually costlier than the tripod that I use. So a good ball head is also required. A headlamp with a red light option. Now, this is very important because often on when we shoot from dark zones, we have no light around. And if we switch on the headlamp with the normal blue or the LED light, it affects our night vision, and therefore we momentarily or for a little while duration we lose our night vision, and we are not able to make sure what we are shooting. We are not able to make out what we are shooting. So the red light, on the other hand, while it helps you to see in the darkness, it does not affect your night vision to that extent. So a headlight with a red light option would be important. Extra batteries or power bank. Uh, Extra batteries are important because night sky photography is primarily long exposure photography, and all the shots you're taking are basically anything between 10 seconds to 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes each, that is. Uh, so on top of that, you are also constantly checking the display to ensure what you're shooting is as per what you had actually envisaged. So given that, extra batteries are required, and of course these days cameras are coming with the USB-C charging and power bank charging option, so you can keep on charging your battery even while you're shooting. I would also recommend that the beginners download a software like the Photopills or the Photographer's Ephemeris or Stellarium. Now, Photopills is a paid app, so I wouldn't insist on this, but Photographer's Ephemeris or Stellarium are still, I think, free. These are apps which give you a lot of information about where the Milky Way is going to be, where the Polaris is going to be, what are the sunset, sunrise times, moonset, moonrise times. So these are ones which help you plan what you're going to shoot. So in addition to these, depending on your interest or budget, there are a lot of optional gear that one can use, and it depends on how serious one is about shooting landscapes. Like you can invest in more advanced gears like panoramic heads, motion control devices, low level lights, screen magnifiers, equatorial mounts, auto guide controllers, noise pollution filters, narrow band filters, astro modified cameras, etc. I mean, there's almost no end to what gear you can procure to make your photographs just a wee bit better. Now, but these are optional, and let me tell you, these are not mandatory to click a good or a beautiful astro landscape. I'll share a photograph which I had shot with a D850 and a tripod, nothing else. And this was my first, image that I had shot in Ladakh. First image of Milky Way that I had shot in Ladakh. This was, I think, some 5-6 years back. Uh, it's a single exposure, no, not much of post processing. But yeah, to my advantage, Ladakh provides you with dark skies. So as I said, equipment helps, but it is not mandatory. You can shoot beautiful astro landscapes with simple equipment, provided you know how to shoot those landscapes. So the point is, where do we shoot? How do we get these beautiful images? In terms of the location, how do we decide which location to shoot at, and whether that location will give us a proper starry sky at night? Well, there are several ways of finding out how good a location would be for night sky. I'll be sharing a couple of them, but the night sky per se is graded. The darkness of the night sky is graded as per a scale called a Bottle scale. In fact, a gentleman called John E. Bottle created this scale and published it in February 2001 edition of Sky and Telescope magazine to help amateur astronomers compare the darkness of observing sites. The Bottle Dark Sky Scale is a 9-level numeric scale that measures the degree of darkness and grades them from class 1 to class 9. So, class 1 being the darkest and class 9 being the most light polluted. So, I'll give you an example of class 9. If you see this particular video, this was shot from, again, my apartment balcony. This is actually a transition from day to night, and okay, I think I'll have to share this. So basically, what my intention of showing this particular video was that you saw the transition from day to night, and generally in a dark area, the sky would be lit up with stars, but here the ground gets lit up with all types of light, and the only light, lit object that we see in the sky is a moon about to set. So how do I shoot nightscapes when there are no stars visible in the sky? So therefore, that is when we obtain, or rather, so the question is, what do we shoot then? So we shoot images like this in the city. And these are a couple of, lunar full moon nights basically, and a lightning, stormy night. These are all, again, shot in Hyderabad. So how do we find out, or rather determine which area to shoot at? Okay, let us look at this scale per se. So this is the Bottle scale. If you see it, classifies Bottle 1 to Bottle 9. Bottle 1 are excellent dark sky sites.
Sir, your slides are not moving, sir.
Sorry,
stuck in the video itself.
Sorry, you're stuck in the video?
Okay, the slides are stuck in the video, sir.
Can you see anything now?
No, sir. Sir, I think you close the video and then you
just play it again. So I think it will be. Okay, does it move now?
No, sir, nothing is moving.
Nothing is moving. Okay.
Yeah, now it's fine.
Yes.
You can see how dark is your sky, right?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. I think, sir, you can again talk after the video wala thing, because I think we could not see the lunar thing which you were explaining, because I was trying to find out that, but I think we were stuck in the video. Yeah.
Can you see now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So basically, what I was saying is, when you can't shoot stars in the sky, so what do you shoot? You shoot the only things, the only light objects that you can see in the sky. So these are basically, full moon night. The right extreme is the pink moon that we had last year. The left extreme is again on a full moon night. How the the moon descends or sets basically is a series of photographs combined together to create this image. And of course, the center one is the series of lightnings that we captured one stormy evening in Hyderabad. So these are all photographs in Hyderabad, which actually has Bottle 8 or bottle 9 skies. So you can imagine that I can't shoot star trails or Milky Way in a place like Hyderabad because there are no stars visible to the even to the camera. Forget about naked eyes. So as I was mentioning, the bottle scale is from class 1 to bottle class 1 to bottle class 9, with 1 being excellent dark sky sites. And the description is like, in this zone, the zodiacal light, the zodiacal band is visible. The M33 direct vision, you can see it with naked eye. It's a naked eye object. The Milky Way, actually casts shadows on the ground. Air glow is also readily visible, and believe me, this thing is not an exaggeration. When I was shooting in Hanle, I did find that the Milky Way at night is actually casting shadows on the ground. So it is that dark, and so you can imagine what would be. It's a astrophotographer's delight, actually, such places. And on the other hand, Hyderabad would be a city sky, bottle 8, bottle 9. You hardly have, I asked my daughter to identify Orion, the Orion's belt, and she had to wait for 3 days to finally see some vague, structure of the Orion. So it's that is how it is. So basically, the skies are graded as per this bottle scale from class 1 to class 9. So how do we find out, which place is bottle 1? So you have this, I recommend this particular website called www.lightpollutionmap.info. Now, when you go into this website, and maybe you go into a particular region, you click on that particular spot where you want to shoot, and it gives you a scale, gives you a window like this, which says that the bottle scale of that particular place is, so and so. So like this particular thing I clicked on, it's a screen capture of Hyderabad. And Hyderabad, it says, has bottle class 8, bottle class 9. So basically, when you click at a particular place, you will see that, it gives you the bottle class of that particular region, and then you can decide whether that place is worth shooting or not. Now, there would be another, apart from bottle scale, also there is also a color scale. In this, where the regions are mapped from black to white through blue, green, yellow. This thing, black being the darkest and white being the brightest. So here, if you see India's map, now you see, you can make out gray and black areas, and you can basically try and target these areas for shooting night sky, whereby you will get decent skies. In fact, star trail is not a problem, because star trail you can shoot even in bottle 5, bottle 6 areas, even in cities. May not be Hyderabad or Delhi, but otherwise, smaller towns and places, from your rooftop, you can shoot star trails. Only thing is, the density of stars will be, the trails will be less. But Milky Way is something which is not visible beyond maybe bottle 5. So, and that, as per the color scheme, would be something like, say, the dark green or the blue regions. So, even the green areas, while you can perhaps shoot Milky Way, it won't be a very impressive photograph. So ideally speaking, you should look for bottle 4 or below, and if you want good Milky Way photographs, it should be bottle 3 or below. Or in this particular case, the color, as per the color scale, maybe blue, gray, black. That should be our target areas. And in fact, there is one more app which I would recommend. It's called Clear Outside. This is a mobile app. I think this is free. And this particular app provides a lot of data pertaining to a particular location. So you can feed in any location. For instance, here I have input Dang in Gujarat, South Gujarat. So it says that Dang, it gives the lat long of that place, and it says it's a class 2 bottle sky, which is a decent dark area, and I would love to shoot in bottle 2 areas. It also gives the sunset sunrise times, the moonset moonrise times. It gives the clouding, hourly clouding pattern in that particular area, the humidity, the temperature. So if you are planning to shoot at a particular location during a particular period, an app like this would be very helpful, telling you whether you could shoot in that location at a given point of time. So these are some of the ways where you can decide as to how you choose a location to shoot the night sky. Having said that, so if you see the starred places in this particular map, these are areas where I have shot, and these are not necessarily all dark places. I've shot even in bottle 5 cases, but I'll show you the results. They may not be as desirable. So for instance, let us look at this particular see, the top left is a bottle 5 sky. This is about an hour's drive from Hyderabad, and actually I did not know I had shot this Milky Way till the time I came and processed this image, and finally found that it's peeping from behind the light and the clouds and the dust and the pollution, the top left corner. Not a great image, but this is just to show that this is what you can get in bottle 5. Whether it is worth shooting or not is up to you or up to the photographer, how he wants to compose a particular shot. The bottom right, of course, is from Puvar, Kerala. Again, a bottle 4 sky. It is a little more structured, the Milky Way, but again, something that I would not like as a photographer to shoot unnecessarily. Waste my time traveling to all that distance and shooting an image like this. Coming to bottle 3 and bottle 2. So left one is a bottle 3 sky shot in Chalkewadi, Maharashtra. You can see that the Milky Way is definitely much clearer, but the light in the horizon means that to a great extent there are no stars visible, up to maybe say 20-25 degrees from the ground. Bottle 2 on the right hand side is from a place called Khadiyadro in Kutch. There is some amount of light in the horizon, but here, of course, you can definitely say, yeah, it's worth shooting in a sky with a sky like this. And of course, there's bottle 1 sky, where the Milky Way has, you can see the colors of the nebula in the Milky Way. And this is a place where I go back perhaps every year to try and shoot the night sky. Star trails, on the other hand, I will show you, like bottle 5 sky star trails. This is bottle 3. This was shot in a place 100 kilometers from Hyderabad. It's a man-made lake called the Pakhal Lake. This is a star trail shot in bottle class 2 sky in Kutch, beginning of this year. And this, of course, is my favorite shooting location as of now. This is a mountain called Konbur Ongdon in Zanskar in Ladakh. Bottle 1 skies. Only thing is, I don't know how long it will stay, because there's a highway being built from Manali to Padum via this particular mountain. And once that comes up, I really don't know whether this place will remain a bottle 1 or will become worse. Okay, so this is basically to give an idea as to how to locate a decent dark area to shoot a night sky, and what type of images you can expect from skies from bottle 1 to bottle 5, perhaps even lower. So having said that, that brings us to the issue of when do we shoot the night sky in terms of the time of the month. So basically, one can shoot the night sky from maybe the new moon to the first quarter, and from the third quarter again to the next new moon. So it's basically in a period of 1 month, you get almost 15 days to shoot the night sky, star trails or Milky Way. Yes, of course, when there is moon, whether it is a waxing crescent or a waning gibbous or a waning crescent, one has to keep track of moonrise and moonset timings. So, in fact, it can always be used, to the advantage, the presence of moon. While the moon is there, you can shoot a lovely foreground, and subsequently, once the moon sets, you can shoot the sky, and then you merge the two images in post processing and get a beautiful image. So, but even to shoot, single exposures, you have almost 15 days window during a month. Also, you will often hear people talking about the Milky Way season. Okay, star trail can be shot around the year, all 12 months. There is absolutely no problem. Can you shoot the Milky Way around the year? Well, there is a catch to it. You can shoot throughout the year, no doubt about that. But there is a catch to it, because what generally photographers talk about when we talk about the Milky Way is the galactic center of the Milky Way, or the Milky Way core. Now, this Milky Way core is visible in the northern hemisphere primarily from, say, March till late October, or maybe mid-October. After this, the core, when it is above the horizon, it is daytime, so we can't see it. In the southern hemisphere, it's a little longer, maybe from end January to end November, we can see the Milky Way core. So if somebody talks to you about the Milky Way season, rest assured, what they're talking about is primarily the period when you can see the Milky Way core, or the galactic center of the Milky Way. However, the Milky Way remains visible throughout the year. So you can shoot other portions of the Milky Way. They may not be as bright, but they're almost equally beautiful, maybe even more beautiful, because some of those regions are very colorful. And if you can shoot properly, you can shoot those in winter, when the skies are generally clear, absolutely clear. So coming to that, so summarize basically, you can shoot star trails around the year. Of course, not in monsoon in India, but otherwise, theoretically, whenever the sky is clear, you can shoot the star trail. Milky Way, if you are shooting the galactic core, you can shoot it from, in India, that is, we can talk about, we can shoot from early March to mid of October. And if you are shooting other regions of the Milky Way, it can be any time during the year. Okay. Now, this is a generic suggestion. These are generic suggestions in terms of shooting any type of night sky, not necessarily star trails or Milky Way. However, this applies to both genres. I will share a few specific tips subsequently when I cover star trails and Milky Way separately. So, for a nightscape shooting, you need to mount your camera on a sturdy tripod and ensure that the tripod has been leveled. Otherwise, it can lead to a lot of unwanted effects. Your camera and lens should both be in manual focus mode. Don't put it in autofocus. Why I emphasize camera and lens is because your camera will have an autofocus switch. Please turn it off, and your lens will have a manual and an autofocus mode. Please make it into a manual mode, because either way, when you're you're shooting the night sky, it's very difficult for the camera to focus because of the minuscule amount of light that comes from the stars. So if your autofocus is on, it could keep hunting and change the focus after you started shooting, and you will end up realizing after you finished your shoot that all your photographs are out of focus. So please turn them off. Another very simple, but often we don't use, most of us put a UV filter in front of our lens to protect the lens from scratches and dust and things like that. Please take it off, because it could actually it adds another layer between your sensor and the light coming from the stars. So just take it off. Turn off the vibration reduction or image stabilization, whatever it's called in respective brands. Because you are on a tripod, you don't require vibration reduction, image stabilization. In fact, those can actually cause problems if you're shooting on a tripod. Also, there is something called the long exposure noise reduction, or the long ISO noise reduction. Please turn them off, because if your LENR is on, what happens is the camera will shoot a frame for which you have decided a shutter speed of 30 seconds, and subsequently it will shoot another 30 seconds duration shot to basically reduce the long exposure noise. So for a 30-second shot, you have to wait for 1 minute before you can take the next shot. So please switch off your LENR, and also turn off the automatic playback feature on your camera, because every time you shoot, the display comes on, it affects your night vision, it consumes battery. So please turn it off. So these are some of the tips which you can implement while shooting night sky. Now, coming to specifics. So what do we shoot in wide field astrophotography? So, okay, let me ask Mukul, could you see that time lapse?
Yes, sir.
We could.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Now, can you see the next screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. So, basically, what drew me to this genre of wide field astrophotography are actually not the Milky Way images, but some beautiful star trail images shot by an Australian photographer called Lincoln Harrison. I mean, I would recommend everybody to have a look at those photographs. It is something which is unbelievable. They're what drew me to this particular genre. And subsequently, of course, as time progressed, I started shooting Milky Way, and perhaps now I spend more time shooting Milky Way than star trails. However, to briefly cover star trails, what sort of trails do we cover, and where do we point our cameras? That is a very interesting question and an important question. Like in the northern hemisphere, if you're pointing camera to the north pole on the north, basically, you get concentric circles. If you point the camera to the south in the northern hemisphere, then you get semicircles, because the south pole star, which is actually not non-existent, but it's an imaginary star, is actually below the horizon. So you get semicircles. And on the eastern and western side, if you're on the equator, then you get straight lines. And anywhere above the equator, you get basically arches, as shown in the figure. And I can show you actually photographs which correspond to these directions. For instance, you see here what you get, what sort of trails you get when you point north or when you point south. Similarly, what sort of trails do you get when you point to the west or to the east? Okay, so how to actually shoot the trails? I mean, technicality wise, how do we shoot trails? There are primarily two methods. Single long exposure, which was the only way one could shoot the trails during the film era, because unlike the digital era, you couldn't combine several films to create an image. Of course, perhaps you could have done that, but that would have been a very cumbersome process. So during the film era, the single long exposure was the only method that was available to the photographer. However, with the advent of digital cameras, we now have the option of multiple shorter exposures, and there are far too many advantages of this particular method of the multiple shorter exposures, because it sort of, during a long exposure, single long exposure of 15 minutes, say during the 7th minute of shoot, there's a light trail that goes in front of your camera. It spoils your entire shoot actually. Or an object moves in front of your camera. It happens. I've had camera positioned for a star trail shoot, and a dog coolly walks into the frame, does whatever it wants to do, and then walks out of that frame. Now, had it been a single long exposure, my entire shoot is actually a waste. However, in multiple shorter exposures, I can very conveniently omit one or two of such frames where unwanted objects creep in, and then process the remaining images and get equally impressive star trail image. So I would always recommend, as of now, that with the digital era and the softwares available to us, multiple shorter exposures is the way to go. So what sort of camera settings would you have during a star trail shoot? Okay, you may shoot in RAW or JPEG. Okay, it depends on what amount of post processing that you want to do. If you want to do a lot of post processing, I would recommend shooting in RAW. However, JPEG is equally effective, and some of the softwares, free softwares, which are available to finally process these shorter exposures, multiple exposures, work only with JPEG. So you could shoot as per your convenience, RAW or JPEG. And let me tell you, processing RAW files, which are much larger in size, is also time consuming and cumbersome. So I leave it to your convenience and your choice, whether you shoot in RAW or JPEG. However, I shoot in RAW because I will show you subsequently how the processing matters in this particular case, and the amount of processing that you can do in RAW, you cannot do in JPEG. Aperture, the wider the camera, the better. However, what I have realized over a period of time is, for star trails, f4 is perhaps the most ideal shooting, especially in a dark zone, because this is an aperture which ensures that your stars are not overexposed. You will see star trail images where the stars are white. It is not that the stars don't have colors, but what happens is basically the stars are overexposed, and therefore you get only white colored trails. However, if you shoot at f4, you will see that the stars do retain much of its color, and you will have colorful star trails. Shutter speed could vary depending on what sort of how long trails you want for each of those shots, which is not very important. So I recommend anything between 25 to 40 seconds for optimum results. ISO settings, again, while a lot of people shoot on higher ISOs of 3200 or maybe even higher, to retain colors in the stars, I would recommend that ISO settings should be 1600 or less. This again helps in creating colorful star trails. White balance, since we are actually, if we shoot in RAW, it is better to, you could leave it at auto, because you can subsequently tweak it in post processing. However, if you're not a great fan of the auto setting, you can manually set the white balance to something like 4000 Kelvin in a dark zone, and maybe even lower in a light polluted zone. Okay, and how long do we shoot, or how many frames? Okay, frames is not a correct here. The shoot duration, total length of the duration, is important. I recommend minimum 2 to 3 hours of shooting to get decent trails. So this is as far as the star trails are concerned. And I'll cover the processing subsequently to show that why processing is also important in star trails. Before that, let me also cover the Milky Way. Okay, so the Milky Way, is firstly, let me tell you, I don't think anybody could have clicked this photograph because for that he would have had to go to another galaxy and shoot our galaxy from that particular place. So, not really a very yeah. It's basically empirical evidence, or that suggests that our Milky Way is like a plate shape, and you can see the position of the sun. Our solar system lies somewhere to between, midway between the center of the galaxy and the edge of the galaxy. The core of the Milky Way lies between constellations Sagittarius and Scorpius. And like all celestial bodies, because of rotation of the Earth, the Milky Way also, or the portion of it that is visible to us, seems to rotate. And generally, if you see the Milky Way as we see it, rises in the southeast and moves towards south or even southwest in the later part of the season. And during okay, let me also tell you what we are talking about when we talk about the core of the Milky Way. Actual photograph of a Milky Way, the core is this particular thing where you see a dark, a horse-like structure. It's called the Dark Horse Nebula, and this is the brightest region of the Milky Way that we can shoot, and this is the galactic center of the Milky Way core, that as we know it. So, and as I was, covering how the Milky Way orientation and the its position in the sky changes, is that during the early part of the season, you will find it low on the horizon. And this is the time when you can actually shoot these arches. This would be, in fact, this particular image was shot early in the morning, because in the early part of the season, the Milky Way is visible, just before the blue hour. Maybe you get about an hour and a half's window, and it is also low on the horizon. So this is the time where it is ideal to shoot the full, the arch of the Milky Way, as we call it. And as the season progresses, the Milky Way actually becomes vertical. So, like in the next two images, you can see that the Milky Way actually is almost vertical. These were shot in the month of, in fact, late September in Spiti. And during this particular time, the Milky Way is visible immediately after the astronomical twilight ends in the evening. And again, you get a 1 hour, window, 1 to 1.5 hours window till the Milky Way core again dips below the horizon. So, beginning of the season, southeast, low on the horizon, arch. Later on the season, it is towards south and southwest, and it is almost vertical. So accordingly, once you know the positioning and the structure of the Milky Way, you can plan your compositions along with the foregrounds that you have in mind. And of course, even during a night, the ideal time would be sometime around June, July, because this is the time when you get to see the Milky Way for the longest duration. For instance, this was shot this year on 27th June 2022 at in the Drangrong Glacier. So you can see at 9:25 it was slightly low on the horizon. It slowly moves towards south and it becomes almost vertical at around 12:30. In fact, it becomes vertical at around 1:15. I did not shoot that lit. So even during the night during June, so if you can see, it is almost visible for 4 to 5 hours during this particular time, and the ideal time would be to find a clear sky, dark area during this particular season, and you can shoot almost the entire night. So another, I will show you this particular video to show how the Milky Way actually moves during the night. This particular video was shot over a period of 3.5 hours, and as you see, it moves from low on the horizon from the left to absolutely out of the frame towards the right. So you can plan your compositions based on where the Milky Way is expected to be at any given time. In fact, that will be, you can find out that particular from the apps like PhotoPills, as I was saying, or Stellarium, or Photographers FMLS. So this is how the Milky Way orientation is during seasons, during even during the same night, how it changes orientation. Once you are aware of how this happens, you can plan your frame or the shoot accordingly. So what are the different techniques of shooting the Milky Way? We have, we can try different techniques, but the first thing that we start off, of course, is single exposure. And this is what in fact, the image on the right was perhaps the first Milky Way shoot that I had done in Chalkewadi in Maharashtra. It was then possibly a bottle 2 sky. It has now become bottle 3. Light pollution has increased. And the left one is, as I had shown earlier, it's the first Milky Way image I shot in Ladakh. So both of these are actually single exposure. By single exposure, I mean it's a single frame, single long exposure shot. Shot, as you can see, both I think were about 30 seconds with ISO of 3200 and an aperture of 2.8. Both were shot with Samyang 14mm and Nikon D850. Now let me tell you, Samyang 14mm is perhaps the best lens that to start astrophotography with. It is a wide-angle lens. It is a manual focal lens. It is sharp. It is fast, and you don't have to sell your kidney to buy this lens. So, in fact, I think majority of astrophotographers begin with this particular thing. It is somewhere called Rokinon, somewhere called Samyang. It is a good lens to start off with, and it gives amazing results. Of course, there are drawbacks, which subsequently we realize. To begin with, I think there's no better lens than this particular lens. So it also, the advantage with this particular exposure is there's not too much of gear required, not too much of post-processing required. It is just go fix your tripod, focus your camera, focus the stars, take a shot, and you're done with. And maybe come and a minor adjustments of contrast and saturation in the Lightroom of Photoshop is adequate to get you decent wide field astrophotographs. Okay, the disadvantage with this particular frame is that when you blow up these images, you'll realize that there is a lot of noise in this type of photographs. Also, because you need to capture as much light as you can within the time that you're exposing, sometimes the stars actually do form trails, which are not visible maybe on the social media or in a smaller scale that we are displaying now. But when you blow, you realize that the stars form trails. So, while to begin with, this is a good technique. Subsequently, as a photographer, we realized that we need a little more into these photographs. How do we do it? Without additional gear, that is. Okay. Gear, if you invest in, there are ways. With additional gear, with the same tripod and the camera and an intervalometer, what we can do is we can stack multiple exposures. So, as you see, there are two photographs here. One is, of course, in Bhuj, the Milky Way rising over this Karni Mata temple in Dholavira in Bhuj. And the right one is again the Milky Way rising over the Khadiyadro Gorge during, these were shot early part of the, or early morning basically, both these shots. Now the left one is actually 28 images have been stacked. Now this stacking will be done in a specialized software, something like the Starry Landscape Stacker for the Mac, or there is a software called Sequator for the Windows. Now those who have Windows operating system are lucky because the Sequator comes free. It doesn't cost you, but the Mac OS one, that is the Starry Landscape Stacker, actually costs you some money. There are, of course, other free softwares for Mac. I think that there is something called the Deep Sky Stacker that comes in free. I think still now it is free. So basically what you do is you take multiple images, minimum say 15 to 20 of them, and then stack them in this particular software. So why you need a specialized software is if you stack them in Photoshop or the other Star Trail softwares, then because this is shot over a period of time, the stars will form trails, and the softwares actually accentuate those trails and make them longer basically. So you need a specialized software where the stars are aligned and they don't form trails. They are still pinpoint stars. The advantage with this particular genre is while you require, specialized software and maybe a little longer time to process these images, the advantage with this is that it reduces the noise dramatically. And it also extracts much more details that you can from the Milky Way than you can do it in a from a single exposure image. So this is the way you can do. You can create better nightscapes without investing in costly gear or additional gear. So if you have the budget and the inclination and the desire, you can always go in for equatorial mounts, or the, what we commonly call as trackers, which actually moves the camera at the speed of the stars and thereby nullifying the relative motion between the stars and the camera, and therefore you can shoot for longer duration without the stars forming trails. So like this particular image is a single tracked exposure of about 1 minute. So you can see that the Milky Way definitely has more details in this particular image. It is also less noisy. The drawback, or the flip side of this particular technique is, since the camera is moving, the foreground gets blurred. So you have to basically, after you have taken your sky shot or before you're planning to take the sky shot, you have to switch off your tracker and take a separate ground shot and then merge them in post process. So therefore it entails additional post processing time and a little know-how of the softwares to know how to blend them correctly. But this definitely gives you better details in the sky, in the Milky Way, or whatever object you're trying to shoot. Subsequently, of course, you can also shoot tracked multiple exposures. So basically now you're increasing the degree of difficulty of shooting. Earlier we had a single exposure on a static mount, then we had multiple exposure on a static mount, then we had a single exposure on a moving mount or a tracker. And now we have multiple exposure on a moving mount or a tracker. So what this does is it gives you the leeway of creating such colorful and detailed Milky Way images as you can see in these particular photographs. The shooting process is long, the post-processing process is long, but the effects or the final output is definitely much better than what you can desire from single exposures or even stacked photographs. So like a typical example is the bottom right hand corner. This was shot in drawing room. This is a stack of actually 5 90-second shots, the sky that is, and the foreground had to be shot separately, and that is one shot of about 2.5 minutes shot with the tracker switched off. Similarly, the right hand is a 5 track shots of 1 minute, and foreground is a separate single shot of 30 seconds. So here, while the shooting process is longer, the process is longer, you get definitely better images in terms of the sky, clarity in the sky, the color in the sky, the details in the Milky Way, and of course even the foreground can be much less noisy and clear. Of course, then there are the panos. You can have untracked panos. This is again a tracked pano. You can have single row panos, you can have multi-row panos. So there is no end to the complications that you can create for yourself. However, this particular thing is like a two row pano. One row for the sky and one row for the foreground. And the sky itself was tracked for 6 images were tracked, and then stitched in PS, and then the foreground was shot with the tracker off and stitched in PS, and then the 2 images were merged in Photoshop. It is a very time consuming thing. However, I mean, I leave it to you whether you feel that photograph is worth the effort that was put in. So like this particular process, it must have taken me about 40-45 minutes to shoot the single image. That is one. Another track pano is this was shot at Bangla Palace in near Padum in Zanskar. Again, tracked sky and untracked foreground merged in post process. A few other techniques to improve your photographs. There's something called exposure blending, whereby the sky is exposed separately and you have a longer foreground exposure to ensure that the foreground is adequately lit, because if there is no other external light available, then you have to give a really long exposure to ensure that you get a noise free and adequately lit foreground. So this, you can call this technique exposure blending. There is something called time blending. Like this particular photograph on the right, top right, was shot. The foreground was shot during the blue hour. In fact, it was shot at a place called Damsna in Suru Valley near Kargil, about an hour and a half drive from Kargil. The river you see is the Suru River, and the peaks that you see are the Noon Kun peaks. And this particular, the foreground was shot during blue hour, and I left the camera there. Fortunately, it was within the campus of the resort that we were staying in. And subsequently, a couple of hours later, at around 9:30, when the Milky Way became visible, I went and shot the sky. And then the two were merged actually. The position of the tripod and the camera never changed. So technically, it won't be a composite, but they were shot at different times on the same day and then later merged in post process. Again, bottom left, you see 2 photographs. These were where the foreground is much closer to the camera than your infinity mark permits. So if I had taken one single shot, the foregrounds in both these images would have been blurred. So I had to take 2 shots, one focused on the foreground, one on the sky shot, one again, and then they were focus stacked or merged in post process. And then there is also again another technique of ensuring that you highlight something in the foreground by light painting it. So the bottom right image is one where the stairs leading up to the person standing on the top of the stairs for, in front of the Milky Way was lit with an external LED light, and to create that effect of lit stairways leading to that particular it's sort of a leading line that it leads your eye to that particular individual standing at the bottom of the Milky Way. So these are some of the techniques that you can use to improve your Milky Way photographs. Okay, so I think I've already taken quite a bit of time, but however, one last thing. I have heard a lot of apprehensions about post processing. Let me tell you, as far as night photography is concerned, post processing is absolutely mandatory. Without post processing, you cannot get the final output, final image. Just to give you an example, I will show you this particular photograph. See, the photograph on the left is a single image, and subsequently, the top right is a processed star trail image where several such photographs were combined to get this particular image. And some advanced processing techniques actually resulted in the bottom right image, which is, you can see there are a lot of, it's much cleaner, lot of colors in the stars, and overall it looks better. Of course, I mean, the degree of post processing that you do is up to the choice of the photographer himself. However, this is the difference between an unprocessed photograph, a partially processed photograph, and a properly processed photograph. Similarly, say Milky Way, like the left one is straight out of camera. This was shot in Bhandardara during the, they call this Kaja festival, where during pre-monsoon, the fireflies are visible. And the right one is the processed image. Of course, the foreground here was a stack of 3 images to ensure that you see more of the fireflies in the foreground. But the sky is the same image, and you can barely see the the Milky Way in the out of camera, but when you process, you can distinctly make out the structure of the Milky Way. Of course, this is bottle 3 sky now. Had it been bottle 1 sky, perhaps the difference between the processed and the might have been a little less. So basically, there are techniques of processing. For a lack of time, I don't think I will be able to cover those. But processing is important, and it is important that the person knows how to process these images to get the best nightscape images that is possible, or what one sets out to achieve. So that more or less brings us to the particular end of this particular presentation, and I would like, if anybody has any question, I would love to answer them as much as I can. Good evening, Mr. Dugal. How are you?
Hi.
It was really a nice presentation, Dada. It was absolutely fabulous, and your technical, the way you have represented your all photographs with the technical abilities of taking them, it's really superb. It's really, something we would like. Our we are just speechless about the beautiful photographs.
Very true, Mukul. In fact, sir, I can see that you started with different genre of astrophotography, then what should be the gear, and then you moved to the location, how to choose the specific location, then when to shoot. So for the we people who are not much into this, for us also it was really interesting session. So if anyone have any question, please.
Before question and answering session, I would like to ask everyone to switch on their camera so that we can take a group photograph.
Oh yes, yeah, much necessary.
Santanu, please just unshare the screen so that we are all together.
Stop sharing.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I request everyone to switch on your cameras.
Yeah, so some have briefly gone over to watch the score at India, South Africa. So I don't know, anybody has any idea what is the score?
India lost.
Welcome, Vikas sir. I have been also watching your photographs as well. So maybe next few sessions down the line, we would love to host you as well.
Oh yeah, Mr. Vikas, I'm a big fan.
Where is he?
Hi. I want to know one thing.
Yes, please.
Stacking, should I shoot in RAW or JPEG? For 10 frames stacking.
See, Milky Way, please shoot in RAW because the amount of processing that you require in Milky Way is not with RAW with JPEG. So definitely RAW. RAW or JPEG was the option I suggested for Star Trails. Star Trails JPEG also a workable thing, but not Milky Way. Please don't even imagine shooting Milky Way in JPEG.
Thank you.
Santanu, during post processing in Photoshop, are you using any other plugins or how it is?
No, personally, I don't use any other. I can hear echo.
Yeah, somehow it's echoing.
Use any other plugins except I primarily process in Adobe Camera Raw, Photoshop, and Starry Landscapes Stacker. That is pretty good. Yes, okay. Sorry, I will correct myself. I do use depending on the location. If I'm shooting at a location where there is a lot of light pollution in the horizon, I do use a software called gradient exterminator. What it does is it basically you often if you're shooting in a light polluted zone, you'll see a little halo towards the horizon, and the color also affects the color of the sky. Sometimes you'll see purplish or greenish color and maybe darker towards the top of the sky. So the gradient exterminator, what it does is it sort of makes the sky color uniform. It basically removes that gradient in color or a difference in color over the sky. That is one. And also there is a software called Star Terminator. I do use often, to accentuate the Milky Way and reduce the stars in the sky. I sometimes, though not often, but I sometimes do use the Star Exterminator. But you can do that even in Photoshop. You don't require a separate plugin for reducing the stars per se.
Thank you, Santanu.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Mukul, you are not audible.
Rituparnada, if you wanted to ask anything, please carry on.
My question is is there any telescope you have used for any photograph? In that case, is there any motor drive?
No, I have not used a telescope. As I said, primarily not an astronomer. I am an astrophotographer, so I use my DSLR or mirrorless. I have mirrorless also as well. I've used tele lenses, but not a telescope.
So any motor drive you have used to track the?
See, the tracker that I use motorized. I mean, I use an iOptron SkyGuide Pro. Right. It is a motorized thing. It your camera automatically once you have done your alignment, etc. It moves the camera along with the stars and thereby giving you that opportunity to shoot for longer duration.
So, have you ever tracked any particular constellation? No.
No, I again, as I said, I don't generally shoot constellations or nebula. I primarily shoot Milky Way along with landscape features.
Okay, thank you.
For me, this presentation is really a delightful one because I don't have any idea about photography, frankly speaking. And whenever I see this constellation photographs and Milky Ways, I just wonder how you people manage to get all these beautiful photo shoots. So today I got some ideas about your photography and how painstakingly you people are doing all this photography and all that. So I'm really very happy to join your presentation today, and I'm very, very happy. Thank you so much.
I'm glad that you liked it. Thank you very much.
And definitely, Santanu, I would love to also listen to your stories behind the scenes, because someday, like you can come up with your stories, your experiences.
I will tell you one right now. In fact, I had located a spot about 180 kilometers from a place called Malela Tirtham in Telangana itself. And I wanted to shoot there because I felt that it was showing in the app bottle 2, so anyway it would have been bottle 3 if not bottle 2, and it is in a relatively forested area, so I felt that it would be an appropriate place to shoot both Milky Way as well as star trails. So the location is within the Amrabad Forest Tiger Reserve. So I needed the conservator's permission to shoot in that particular location at night, because as per the present the rules, there are no vehicles permitted after 9 o'clock in the evening until 6 o'clock in the next morning. I tried to locate the conservator. I located somebody in the office, and I said that I want to shoot, and I showed my photographs. They said, okay, I won't be able to, I would contact so and so person. So for next 1 week or so, I kept looking for this gentleman. I never found him, and despite numerous calls, messages, never responded. So there were a couple of other guys who were interested to go along and shoot along with me. So what we did was, we went at 5 o'clock, planted ourselves in that particular area, and sat in the car hoping that nobody would notice us or drive us away from that particular area. And fortunately, after a little while, there was nobody around. Once the stars became visible, we started shooting. In fact, we were shooting. In fact, we had set up our cameras and we were having a dinner. After dinner, we'll start our shoot. All of a sudden, we heard the dogs barking, and continuously. And so we switched on a torch pointing to the dog, and all the dogs were not barking at us, but they were barking, looking towards the jungle. And so one of my partners said, "Sir, tiger." So we quickly got into the car and sat in the car for a little while, and then we switched on the headlights, and then we realized they were not cars; they were basically wild boar over there. So
okay,
a lot of such incidents keep happening when you shoot at night, and in places where generally people won't venture into.
Yeah, the similar thing, it happened with me in Manas National Park. So there was a rhino over there.
Rhino is definitely a little more dangerous.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean,
That time I was doing all type of photography, but I have absolutely, taken up this wildlife thing. So since 2018, and I think this has faded away because generally, even though if I carry a wide angle lens, I try to put up my DSLR trap camera setup. So that is why again I do not have any more spare wide angle lens with me to photograph all the landscapes. And the Drangdrung Glacier, which is one of your favorite, I believe. This is the place where I have been riding my bike in 2016, and that's when it was like fully, yeah, and it was like it used to be a heaven in those days, which is now not. And Drangdrung Glacier is now like mostly, I have been seeing in everyone's photograph, but the glacier which I have seen was fully covered with snow, like 45 kilometers I'm riding.
Unfortunate. That is one of the. That's what I was saying. I really don't know how long Zanskar will be what it is today.
Yes.
Like the place I had visited it last year. There was nothing there. I mean, we had to carry our own tents and pitch them there, and there was nothing there. But when I went this year, within a year, the place now there are Chandratal like permanent campsites over there with
yes,
eating joint over there and vehicles passing. In fact, if you see that time lapse that I showed you, what you will realize in that particular area, there's so much of light vehicle passing even at night from that particular area. And now this is still not, the road is still not done. Imagine when there is a highway over there constructed from via Shinkula from Padum to this thing. That place is really good. In fact, I was trying to chat up a couple of fellows over there, approach the Kargil district magistrate to try and see if that area could be taken up for declaring it as a dark sky reserve, something like what Hanle has been done. But the government machinery doesn't move that fast. So hopefully they can do something to preserve that area, because otherwise it's a lovely place to shoot night sky. In fact, Zanskar as of now is something so beautiful. You can just place your camera anywhere in any direction and you can get beautiful images over there.
Exactly. Great, sir.
Yeah, I think,
anything anyone would like to ask? Anything? I think we will close up. Close this session here.
Everyone.
Thank you so much, sir,
Thanks
for your valuable time which you spent with us. And we also look forward to host you again for your.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks, sir, for such an insightful session.
You're most welcome, and thank
you. So we can close here.
Present in this forum.
Yes, and thanks to each and everyone who has attended the session. I believe that everyone has benefited from the insightful session of Mr. Santanu Majumder. So let's close here. Thank you. Good night.
I have just one question. I have just one question, please.
Yeah, please.
I am planning to visit Uti in February. Around 20th February, it is New Moon Day.
Okay.
Will I get there any year?
See, as you go south, the Milky Way will be visible a little earlier than the northern part of India. So 20th February, yes, you will get very low on the horizon, depending on the light on the horizon. I tell you, if you key in Uti in one of those apps, maybe the Clear Outside app, it tells you it's a class 4 total sky. So, I mean, this I'm about, of course, the town or the city, whatever it is, per se. maybe if you go a little outside and find out a location, it could be bottle 2 or bottle 3. But you have to plan your shot accordingly, because Milky Way at that point of time will be very low on the horizon, and you will get a very small window, maybe 45 minutes or an hour before the blue hour starts. So you can definitely try that particular thing. I mean, again, here we are talking about Milky Way 4.
Thank you.
It will be pretty low on the horizon. So, since going, and if you're carrying your camera, etc., please do give it a shot, and I'm sure you will capture something. Because I've seen, I think Hirok is stationed in Uti for the time being. I mean, he was doing some course over there. I've seen him posting photographs of Milky Way shot in the month of February from there. So, like he must have climbed it and then shot from there with the town low on and the Milky Way of that particular thing. So you can similarly, look for a. You can talk. Having been there, you'll have an idea which would be one of the good places to shoot from there.
Yes.
Or maybe if some local guys are there.
Yes. One local driver has assured me to for a good night sky, dark night sky. He has promised to.
Only thing is, I would take driver's statement with a pinch of salt, because when they say night sky, it did not necessarily for our requirement. So maybe you can go and have a look. You can do a recce maybe one day.
Surely, I will do recce in the daytime.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And good night.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.